Live. Welcome to Keepers of the Word. We are an esoteric study group of Freemasons. Our purpose of sharing knowledge of mystery schools and debunking misconceptions about Freemasonry. You're here with Mike and Ron. Thanks for tuning in.
Any of the opinions expressed on Keepers of the Word do not reflect the opinions of other organizations or Masonic lodges. Today we're going to talk about and explain some definitions of esoteric and occult. Esoteric intended for or likely to be understood by only a small number of people with a specialized knowledge or interest. Occult, supernatural, mystical, and magical beliefs, practices, and phenomena. Why did we need to explain that? Because the public needs to know. Occult, whenever you mention occult or esoteric, people always want to associate that with just Satanism, unfortunately.
Negative, dark.
It's negative, dark energy or dark magic or whatever, and it's not. It's something that we need to talk about, and that's why we have Keepers of the Word, because we talk about those things. So, go for it, Ron.
I understand that Aleister Crowley was involved with the O.T.O, and I've done some research on Crowley. I've heard some things about him, and was just curious if you could expand on.
I'm sorry. We need to introduce our guests.
I'm
first.
sorry.
It's okay.
Please do.
Yes. Today we have a special guest who has vast knowledge in both areas, in the O.T.O and other esoteric areas. Mr. Milo Duqette, an esteemed active member of the order, and also a Freemason.
Thanks for
out
joining
of
us.
Lodge 327 in Long Beach. So now, go ahead.
Okay. So, could you start by talking about Crowley?
Oh, you've heard negative things about
No, the Beast. The Beast it could be a good porn name, but we're not going there. We're talking about Crowley, and Crowley was in many regards known as the Dark Lord of.
And he would just love that.
I bet you he would, right?
He would just love that.
So, go ahead and share what you got.
Well, Crowley was a man who was ahead of his time. Even if his time would have been right now, he would have been ahead of his time. He cultivated a notorious reputation, and for what he thought was pretty good reasons. Magic is a spiritual art form that is for grown-ups. And magic tinkered with by immature or superstitious people is sort of a recipe for mental illness. But for adults and for people who aren't particularly superstitious, and for people that can see through the metaphors of the art form, it's high magic. It's great yoga. It's a formula for spiritual illumination and magic. And in the same way that the craft of Masonry has been kept to a certain degree secret from the profane, Crowley liked to more or less test the people who were potentially going to be studying magic, and if they were superstitious enough to be freaked out by the way Crowley was presenting it, then they were too superstitious to actually
Handle the truth.
yeah. And so he delighted in freaking out the freak-outable. And in the sense that just the people that stayed in his circle were people that were actually ready to handle this work and to move ahead. And but there's really no place for superstition, and the idea of Satanism and things like that's a very superstitious sort of a perversion of a mentally ill attitude toward averse Christianity or averse religion, and that just has no place in a serious magical study.
And in your area, in the area of freaking him out, do you know of anything that he did in particular, or was there anything that he covered that he would throw at somebody and then freak them out immediately?
Where shall I start?
Let's see.
Okay. The thing that you hear about mostly is one thing that he wrote in his book 4, part 3, which has been published for years, is Magic in Theory and Practice. And you have to remember the time period that Crowley was writing in. And at the time he wrote this was in the 1920s. And he was trying to write in an intelligent way about what we would call today tantric yoga. And there's a certain aspect of tantric yoga that involves sexual energy.
Sex magic, yeah.
Right. And the opening of certain chakras through the conscious working of sexual energy up and down the spinal column. And you go down to B. Dalton Bookstore or Barnes and Noble, and you'll see a section that big on tantric yoga, okay? Mm-hmm. But in those days, it was actually illegal to publish material that had anything to do with one's with sexuality. Oh. As a matter of fact, in the time that Crowley was writing this particular thing I'm going to talk about, even medical journals had to be very careful with their wording when they talked about the male or female sexual organs. The medical journals had to be careful about it. So if he was going to talk about a tantric process whereby in a meditative exercise, the consciousness of the individual or the magician dissolves for a moment into ecstasy at the moment of sexual release. That moment destroys temporarily the ego. The magician, in a sense, at that moment, when it's properly done, properly worked up to, that ecstasy dissolves into a high state of consciousness where the magician no longer is separated from the rest of the universe. In other words, everyone on the planet accidentally, one way or another, experiences these moments of complete self-annihilation. And it feels great. Okay. But in a sense, the consciousness itself has achieved an extremely high level of consciousness, which can be expanded and prolonged. It's our natural state of consciousness. You and me aren't even separated from each other in reality.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And in that moment, everything's dissolved into ecstasy.
So ego death.
And when you are everything, here's the magical part of the process. When you are everything, when you're identifying with yourself as the everything, you can create anything. And so this is where a magician who has certain layers of their consciousness well trained. The Kabbalists have the 4 levels, the body, the mind, the kind of the soul intuition, and then the life force itself. If you've got the lower part of you trained like a nice robot to be able to hold in the ruach, or the imagination, the image of what you would like to accomplish or to create, while you are everything, conceivably and theoretically you could give birth to anything. It's the ultimate, Crowley saw it as the ultimate magical creative technique. But you got to be a great yogi to pull it off. Okay.
It's a lot of practice.
And a lot of practice, and you kind of got to know what you're doing. So it's the technique's easy to explain. I explained it to you just now.
Right.
But to actually pull it off requires you being not only a great magician, but a great yogi. So he wanted to talk about this in the Magic and Theory and Practice. So he called it, and you can't talk about sex. He couldn't say it just like I said it just now.
During that time.
So instead, he wrote a chapter called The Bloody Sacrifice. Okay. And he used the idea of primitive blood sacrifice, like the Jewish form of temple worship, the slaughtering of animals and all that blood
spreading
stuff,
the blood.
Okay,
right.
And he was using that as a metaphor to saying, oh yes, this is the great thing, release all of this blood and stuff like that. He was using the word blood in place of the word semen. He was using the word death instead of the word
orgasm,
ecstasy. Okay. He was, and he treated it like it was child sacrifice. That's the best one. Oh, God loves a child sacrifice. And the best child is a male of high intellect, And then in the footnote he says, it's always the magician himself. Okay. And then there's another footnote at the end of this thing saying, you're going to get in real big trouble if you misunderstand what I just said. And then in another footnote to that chapter, he says, look, Soror, somebody said, I'm really unwise to say it this way. And she made me promise to say, I didn't really mean what I was saying outwardly, that there's a meaning behind what I was saying. And then he said at the end of the chapter, my records show that I performed this child sacrifice 120 times one year.
Ooh.
So what he was saying there is,
Tantra.
I ejaculated 120 times this year, and without making anybody pregnant.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
So
now. Can you see his sense of humor?
yeah, I can.
So was he a yogi? Was
he was
well practiced,
as good as tight Englishman can be.
Yeah.
So next question, I don't mean to push you out there. Talking about the way you were talking about the dissolving of the ego, I mean, that's ego death right there. And I know many people experiment with psychedelics in order to accomplish the same thing. But I also know that yoga is something that can also accomplish it. So did he dabble both ways, or was yoga just the primary?
By the time he started writing about this stuff, he had been practicing. He'd studied with Alan Bennett in the Golden Dawn. As a matter of fact, they became roommates. Alan Bennett then later became a Buddhist, went to Ceylon, became a Buddhist monk, and founded. They've made statues to him. He's founded a Buddhist order, and Crowley was a talented, very disciplined guy. He was very athletic. He was a mountain climber.
Right.
He still has 2 mountain climbing records that have not been broken.
Wow.
On K2, he spent a great length of time on the O.T.O glacier at an altitude without oxygen, and nobody does that anymore. So
Wow.
the record still holds. He was a rock climber.
So it seems like he was very misunderstood.
Oh yeah, and he thought. You know how? Have you ever met a genius?
Yes, I have.
They're hard people to know. They're hard people to be friends with.
They're not able to be in society like the rest of us.
And they don't really understand or spend too much time caring what other people think.
Exactly.
And Crowley was like that. And Crowley couldn't believe that everybody didn't see what a great genius he was. Everybody didn't get him, and he couldn't.
Well, clearly everyone didn't, because, didn't even his daughter kind of press away from him, disown him at some point?
Oh, yeah, and I know Crowley's grandson, and great guy, he's a great musician, pianist, jazz pianist. And the family he's crazy, he's a crazy guy. So he's not really a family kind of guy, and and so he was, and friends. It was hard to be friends with Crowley.
Okay. I think stepping aside from Crowley and getting into the occult and esoteric studies, what interests you the most about the occult and the esoteric?
That's a good question and impossible to ask or to answer.
It's very vague.
For me, it's easier to do it than not do it. It's when I was a kid growing up in Nebraska, which is like it's very Dante-esque. It's hell.
Which level?
No offense to Nebraskans. You're lovely people. So. But my father was a Mason, member of Signal Lodge, which got absorbed into my lodge, and Scottish Rite, Long Beach Scottish Rite bodies. And so I belonged to the same lodge as he did here in town. But he had a morals and dogma, a nice hardbound morals and dogma with the index, that thick in the back. And when you're a kid growing up in Nebraska, there's not a heck of a lot to do, and you become very desperate, and you've become so desperate you find something to read.
You picked up morals and dogma.
And so I pulled the morals and dogma down, and I go, what the hell? Whoa.
Ooh.
But there's cool drawings.
Yeah.
There's cool drawings and stuff. And but it talked about gods, and it talked about the rites of Eleusis, and it talked about mystery cults of the ancient times, and the Persians and the Egyptians, and I just thought, this is so cool. And my dad used to rattle off his Scottish Rite degree names. And he would always finish up with Prince of the Royal Secret. And it's like, oh, tell me, what's the royal secret? I can't tell you. It's a secret. I said, you can tell me. And he said, no, I can't. But when you become a Mason, you'll be a prince of the royal secret. I said, can't you even tell Mom? And he said, no, I can't tell your mother. And I go, whoa, that's cool. Can't tell Mom. I want that. And so I was intrigued with that. And when I was 14, a chapter of DMLA opened up in town, in Columbus, Nebraska. And of course, my dad wanted me to be a DMLA. And so I joined the DMLA, and it was okay. And I'm proud and happy and proud of my membership in DMLA. But I wasn't, and I enjoyed dressing up in capes and strutting around in the dark. Okay, so that seemed sort of magical, you know. Yeah. And after convocation, everybody would leave the temple and go out in the recreational area and have cookies and stuff. But I loved the temple. We had in Columbus, Nebraska, had a nice little second floor temple with that soft, beautiful, indirect lighting and nice old furniture. The pedestals in the south and the east and the west were gorgeously constructed, and it was semi-dark, and where the light was coming from, it was indirect, so you couldn't even see where the light was coming from. And I just loved the feel in the temple. And I kept thinking, Prince of the Royal Secret. Okay. And it was a tangible feeling in the room. I was feeling the egregore, okay, of 100 years of Masons strutting around in there. Yeah. But it was a timeless egregore, like I was feeling centuries of Masons strutting around in there. And I would sit by myself in the South. I loved sitting in the South. And I felt the top of the podium, and there was a nice thick piece of granite on the top of it, and I sort of pushed it, and it moved, and off of a little pivot on one corner, and I moved it there, and I looked inside, and there was a book in there. And I got the book out, and it was a blue cipher book.
You looked at it like, whoa, what is this?
That's it.
What is this?
Oh, this is ooga booga.
Yeah, so that threw you for a loop. Huh?
Yeah, and I said, this has got to be, this is so cool. This is so cool. So actually, Masonry got me interested in mystical stuff, because I said, okay, there's something timeless here. Mm-hmm. There's a mystery behind this. And oddly enough, I went to hardcore magic things first, and I didn't end up joining the Masons till I was 50. So
wow,
I've been a Mason now for 20 years. So
okay. So did you join the O.T.O first and then join?
Oh God, yes.
So what drew you to the O.T.O, and when did you join that? And why don't you talk about the
And for
the
those
O.T.O.
who don't know what the O.T.O, Ordo Templi Orientis,
right?
Correct. Okay.
I was in the Rosicrucian Order Amorc.
Okay.
I joined about the time my son was born, 1972. Because I heard they were like mystic Freemasons, only there were women. And I said, well, that's for me. And I really found out that I enjoyed putting on a robe and strutting around in the dark in the Rosicrucians, okay? And I truly, truly enjoyed it. And it was almost kind of magical in nature. I was active in Abdiel Lodge here in Long Beach. And I got interested in Kabbalah, basic Kabbalah, and I was introduced to the Builders of the Adytum correspondence course in basic Kabbalah and tarot fundamentals. And I eventually found a early edition of Aleister Crowley's Thoth Tarot, probably 1970 edition, at B. Dalton's bookstore.
Oh, wow.
And I went home and I took the deck home and opened it up, and it's absolutely beautiful. I don't know if you've seen the Thoth deck, but it's breathtaking. But it's really kind of weird, and it's not your father's tarot deck, you know. And but it was so beautiful that I said, this is just absolute. I wonder who this Aleister Crowley character is, because it says designed by Crowley. And I had well, first of all, the cards were so breathtakingly beautiful that they were almost disturbing, if that makes any sense. Like when you hear Philip Glass music, or you hear super cutting edge music, and at first you go, I like that, but it's
Too
kind of
much.
scary.
Yeah.
You know, because it makes you feel things that you
Touches a part of your soul that
Yeah.
you didn't exactly know was there.
I
huh?
didn't even know that thing existed, you know. And so I was a little uncertain, and some of the cards just look so occult and crazy that in my little superstitious ignorance, I thought, you know, this is so beautiful that I don't think this could be made naturally. So, like the devil must have made this. Paganini, the great violinist, played his violin so great that all the other violinists said the devil must have taught him how to do that, because nobody can
Made his
play
deal
that
with the
good.
devil like Robert Johnson or something like that.
There you go, the
Yeah.
crossroads. And so anyway, I said, who's this Crowley character? And I've got a little occult dictionary that is almost like a pamphlet that I bought at the checkout stand at Ralph's, along with make your own sushi and macrame for you, you know. And there's an occult dictionary. And I opened it up and looked up Crowley, and it says, famous Scottish Satanist.
Whoa.
And again, you realize now that you would have
yes.
enjoyed that, right?
At his funeral, a black mass was performed. And I went, oh, I was right. The devil made these cards. You know, I knew that something was up. And I had no idea that what I thought Satanism was didn't even exist in objective reality. And secondly, Crowley wasn't one. Okay. And as a matter of fact, he would have probably been more upset to be called a Scotsman. And no offense to Scotsmen, especially if they're from Nebraska. So I got rid of I gave the cards to my brother, who had an old Bantam Press edition of the Book of Soth the book that goes with them. Now, he wasn't going to read the book, and he wasn't going to look at the cards. But at least we both thought they belonged together. So I gave them to him. And then a friend of ours visited us. We hadn't seen in a couple of years, and he had been in Guatemala farming. And he said, "What you been up to?" "Well, I joined the Rosicrucians, and I'm into tarot and Kabbalah. And speaking of tarot and Kabbalah, I met this, I got these cards from these Satan cards, and I found out that a Satanist made them, and I got rid of those. Good riddance." And he says, "Who is this that created those cards?" I said, "Aleister Crowley." And he goes, and he looks at me like I'm the stupidest person in the world, okay? And I knew he was thinking that because he said, "You're the stupidest person in the world."
He said it to tell you.
And he said, "Everything you think you want to learn with your Kabbalah stuff and your tarot stuff and your Rosicrucian stuff, this guy knew more than anybody else on the planet. And if you're serious about the study of all of this stuff, you're going to have to get knowledgeable about this guy." And I said, "Well, was he a Satanist?" And he goes, "No, he wasn't a Satanist." "Well, yeah, he sort of was, you know." And then he said, but no. And he says, if he was a Satanist, he was a good kind of Satanist. And you're just going to love this guy. And he had read his biography, The Confessions. And if you read the Confessions, then you know everything's okay. So I got the cards back, and I got the book back, and I read the Book of Soth. And if you've ever read the Book of Soth, it goes right over your head, and only a little bit sinks in at first, because he tries to tell you everything about everything in one book. He wrote it toward the end of his life. And I knew one thing. I didn't understand 90% of it, but the 10% I did understand told me that this guy was absolutely brilliant, that he was, for all intent and purposes, the voice, the sane, intelligent voice of all Western mysticism. He put the thing all together in such a way that I could understand it as a mid-20th century hippie. And I started to collect everything I could that was published by him that I could get at the time, which was precious little. So I forgot what the question was, but that
was
but
good
that's
information,
the answer.
though.
Your interest in the O.T.O. and joining.
Okay, so on the O.T.O. Is the literary executor of Crowley's thing. The O.T.O. was a magical. It was a quasi-Masonic order from about 1888 to 1900, and but it was a group of. You may not recognize that things like this happen, but it was a group of Freemasons that actually wanted to study the esoteric nature of the craft. A wild idea. Okay.
Imagine that.
Imagine that.
And they're all over the world and all over Europe. And there was all sorts of very, very tiny little esoteric forms of a whole scattering of Martinist organizations and Gold- und Rosenkreuzens and little groups, none of them having more than 5 or 6 people, and most of them sharing membership with
other groups,
each other.
Yeah.
And they were all trading memberships and warrants like baseball cards. And Franz Hartmann was a famous Masonic antiquarian, I guess you could, because he collected warrants. Karl Kellner and Theodor Reuss were the German and Austrian kind of thing. They wanted to actually study, to add esoteric degrees to the already beautiful degrees of what we would think of as the Blue Lodge, Royal Arch, Council Princes of Jerusalem, and Kadosh degrees. And then once they found out, and they all just ran that, it's just regular Masonry in whatever little district they were in. But once they knew a person can keep a secret or two, and they trust these people that have gone through all of these various degrees already, then they'd say, how would you like to join the O.T.O, which is an esoteric
interesting
group. But we have to be a little quiet because we study Sufism, and we study Tantra, and we study alchemy, and we study the esoteric nature of Christianity. And in those days, they were just starting to open up to these more psychosexual aspects of things that they've been doing in the East for 2,000 years.
Yeah.
Okay, and so the O.T.O degrees said were this extra added on thing to an already existing program. But the thing was that along about 1911, they said, you know, it's stupid that we can't open our membership to women. And so at a continental Masonic meeting, they said, we want to be recognized, and we're open to women too. And United Grand Lodge of England said, no. The Grand Orient of France, no. And so that's when the O.T.O said, okay, we're not going to run the craft degrees.
Separate completely.
We're not going to make Masons anymore. We're going to be our own Idaho.
Which worked out, right?
And it worked out.
Yeah.
And so we have a rich Masonic heritage.
Correct.
But we're not a Masonic group. We don't make Masons.
And that's actually the same reason why we created Keepers of the Word, because we felt that that the craft is missing the esoteric, and it's kind of rooted in it. So, I mean, why not share it? And, you know, according to data is showing that people want the esoteric rather than, you know, just what's on the surface,
right?
Which is, you know, technically the working tools, right? And it goes deeper than that, but it just depends on how deep you want to go. And unfortunately, in most lodges, and I'm pretty sure you can attest to this, there really isn't that group in a lot of lodges. So, you know, you're lucky if you go to a lodge and you have a group that is into the esoterics and can go and guide you down these different rabbit holes, right? Especially, you know, if you wanted to get into like specific mystery schools, say for instance, you wanted to jump into Kabbalah, right? You would have to have somebody who's knowledgeable about it. Luckily for us, you're very knowledgeable on Kabbalah, right? So I noticed you have some books right there, like the Chicken Kabbalah, and let's talk about that. The Chicken Kabbalah, where can we get that at? Amazon?
Oh, you can get it anywhere. Barnes & Noble,
Barnes & Noble, Amazon,
yeah.
Chicken Kabbalah.
If you got a local Barnes & Noble or a local occult bookstore, try there first, because we like to support
the little guy.
But you can get it at Kmart or any place that sells books online. You can get it. So.
And why Chicken Kabbalah?
Okay. years ago, 20-some years ago, I created a tarot deck that's Kabbalistically based, that has on it all the appropriate Goetic spirit names, angels of the Hamfurish. They all belong on decans of the zodiac, just like the tarot, small tarot cards. The Enochian magic, elemental squares, the Enochian magic of John Dee, are the Enochian tablets. Elemental tablets are the same thing as the aces, only they've got hundreds of little angels inside each one of them. Each of the sub-angles of those are the 4 court cards of the system, and they have little angels inside them. In other words, it's like a wonderful storage cabinet of angels, spirits, and demons, all applied through the very strict Kabbalistic structure of the Kabbalah, the Hermetic Kabbalah. So I was very proud of the project, and U.S. Games published the first edition of it. And my publisher, Weiser Books, I did the book that goes with it, called Tarot of Ceremonial Magic. And I was doing a book launch at Bodhi Tree Bookstore in Los Angeles. Are you old enough to remember the Bodhi Tree Bookstore?
Probably not.
It was paradise.
Oh, really?
Okay. But I was giving a lecture or a talk on the Kabbalah, and I'm not a strict Kabbalist. I'm not. I don't embrace or practice the religious aspect of Judaism. That there's multiple kinds of Kabbalistic studies. This is Hermetic Kabbalah. This is magic Kabbalah. Okay, it's not the religious Kabbalah. So it doesn't matter if you mispronounce the words. Okay. But anyway, every word I said, there was a guy in the front row that when I'd even say the word Kabbalah, he'd go, and when I'd say other Kabbalistic words like, the Kabbalistic world of Bria, the world of soft cheeses, or something like that, then he'd go, oh. I'd say, Kether, Malkuth, And then after everybody else was having a good time and laughing and stuff, because I like to have fun, because that's
Why
just
not?
the way I am.
Why
Because
not?
that's life, right?
And afterwards, he comes charging up, and I actually am sort of physically intimidated. And he says, what you teach is not Kabbalah. You don't even say Kabbalah right. It's Kabbalah. And I want to tell him, look, this is Hermetic Kabbalah. It doesn't matter what it sounds like. The letters have numbers, and the numbers have things, and then he was livid. Okay, and it was obvious that I had offended some kind of orthodox sensitivities, which I respect. And but from his point of view, you got to be 40 years old to start to study the Kabbalah. You got to be a man to study the Kabbalah. You got to be rich enough so you don't work anymore. You got to be rich enough that somebody else cooks your food. You got to be rich enough that you don't have to do any work around the house. There's all of these ridiculous things, okay? And if you're doing it from a religious point of view, I respect it. You're like a strange monk of some kind.
Right.
Fine, okay? But no, I'm trying to understand my universe and myself as the reflection of that universe. I'm trying to connect everything in the universe to everything else until there's nothing left to connect. and then I can find my place in the universe. That's what I'm doing this for, okay? I don't care about that other stuff. And finally he says, what you teach is not Kabbalah. It's. And the veins in his neck are sticking out. And he's trying to think of a word that's just dirty enough to describe what kind of Kabbalah I teach. And because English obviously wasn't his first language. And he says, it's chicken.
It's chicken Kabbalah.
And a light bulb goes off.
Wow, I
over
could
my
sell
head.
that.
This guy is not an angry man. This guy's an angel of God who has just given me the name
Giving
of the
you a
kind
gift.
of Kabbalah
Gave you a
that I
That you want. Yeah.
So I invented my own rabbi, Rabbi Lamed Ben Clifford, who can say all the things I want to say and teach Kabbalah the way
You want to do
I
it.
want to teach it, and I can refer to him as my own authority. So this is the teachings of Rabbi Lamed Ben Clifford, and then Lon Duqette comments on it.
Oh.
And I say, yo, he was a phony and everything else, but he was a genius. You know? And this is how I can call myself a genius. And actually, it's the best Kabbalah book that I could come up with. And I teach a Monday night magic class, 41 years in my home in Costa Mesa. And so every year I get goofier and goofier in how I teach the Kabbalah, because Kabbalah is just flat out boring.
Thank you for being honest. I appreciate that.
So, but it doesn't have to be. Okay, it's very fun, it's inspiring, it's awesome. But it's boring if you don't actually incorporate it into something you can actually wrap your meat brain around. And so the concept was hard to sell my publisher because it's a hoax.
But it's serious.
Yes, it's a hoax. And my publisher actually was a Jewish Kabbalist, Donald Weiser. And he thought it was hysterical. And he said, yeah, we'll do it. And it's been very, very well received. And then, but it's old. Okay, how old is it? I think it's 15 years old or something. 2001.
I got to check that out.
But is it still applicable?
It's still selling. Okay.
Yeah, well, I think that's the whole point, right? If it's talking to you and talking to you like your soul, then it means something.
Yeah.
Right? So you did something good. Whether you pronounced it wrong or it's chicken Kabbalah, it doesn't matter. The fact is you're getting through and you're talking to people and it's changing their lives. As long as it does something for the positive, why not? Right? It doesn't matter how you say it, as long as your intent is good.
And if you're interested in any of the Western esoteric traditions, you need a little grounding in Kabbalah. You need to kind of know your Hebrew letters and the tables of correspondences and stuff. So it's been picked up by people that are interested in other Kabbalah-based systems, astrology, tarot, anything that's ultimately Kabbalah-based. Then 3 years ago, I started teaching in China. And as I was leaving Beijing, the organizers said, why don't you come back every 90 days at the equinoxes and solstices and teach Kabbalah? And like a fool, I said, yes, I'll do that. Because I like going to China, it's fun. And but then I decided to have a 3-degree Kabbalah initiation order, just a miniature, off-the-shelf, mini order. And I come back, and I got 3 days. We're sequestered in a hotel with the same 12 people, season after season after season. I have the opportunity to implant in a psychodramatic way the Hebrew alphabet, the 3 mother letters, the 7 double letters, and the 12 simple letters, and then give them 90 days with a study program to master those 3 sections of the Hebrew alphabet. And then on the 4th section, we incorporate it and have a graduation ceremony and get drunk.
Oh, nice.
No. And that's just what I did. And when I came back, I put the material together in a book. This is an initiatory order handbook with the scripts and the floor cloths and the little toys, the cubes, and the dodecahedrons, and the study program. And
what's the name of that book?
this is Chicken Kabbalah. This is Son of Chicken Kabbalah.
Son of.
Son of Chicken Kabbalah. And it's subtitled Rabbi Lamed Ben Clifford's Mostly Painless Practical Kabbalah Course, The Secret Initiation Ceremonies, Exercises, and Meditations of a Probably Completely Fictitious Kabbalah Initiatory Society.
Well accomplished.
So
That's
more fun.
2/3 of the book right there.
So more
Nice.
fun.
So more fun.
Yeah.
I definitely am going to check those out. Now, switching gears a little, I know earlier before we went live, we were talking about Aleister Crowley and the AbraMelin. AbraMelin, the Book of AbraMelin, it tells a story of an Egyptian mage named Abraham who taught a system of magic to Abraham of Worms, presumed to have lived from 1362 to 1458. The system of magic from the book regained popularity in the 19th century and the 20th century, partially due to Samuel Liddell McGregor Mathers, who translated the book of the sacred magic of AbraMelin the Mage. Now, we were talking about the ritual and the 18-month ritual that was supposed to be happening, I believe, in Scotland, right, with Aleister Crowley, and then somehow something happened and he just stopped. So please give us your insight on that. As I know we were talking about when we just stopped, and I kind of want to continue where we were left off.
Well, first of all, Abraham of Worms was a real historical character. He was like the freelance traveling Merlin for an assortment of European and Eastern European potentates. So Abraham, you can look him up, cross-reference him in other ways. He was an alchemist, and a lot of his illustrations are even still available to us. I think Francis Barrett used a few of his illustrations in the Magus. What makes the AbraMelin operation unique? Let's start here. It's medieval European magic was a pretty funky thing, okay, compared to Roman Greco magic that it was sort of born out of, which had a rich tradition coming from the Moors and the Islamic magicians.
Right.
European magic was pretty down and dirty. Let me whip up a demon and get the girl next door to fall in love with me, or let me kill somebody at a distance kind of stuff. Okay. And it was based almost entirely on the ignorance and superstition of the magician. You've heard that ignorance is very powerful on a temporary in a temporary way. Okay, and the idea of the Faustian pact. Okay, that you any sort of spiritual creature that you would you whip up is evil, and because God doesn't want you doing that, because the Bible says stay away from that kind of stuff. But if you really want that girl to fall in love with you, if you really want to kill at a distance, you're ready to jeopardize your soul to get that to happen. And so it's just funky, really funky and stupid. But the AbraMelin, and not only that, but it sends you off on a scavenger hunt for, weasel snouts and eye of newts and stuff like that.
There's a lot of,
and doing bats, but it's like a scavenger hunt, which all kind of has a technical thing to get you psyched up for what you're doing. And I'm not saying that it doesn't work to some level, but it's not really a spiritual art form. It's like a very active form of mental illness.
18 months.
But AbraMelin is a little different. As a matter of fact, the AbraMelin operation puts it on the level of the highest practices of Eastern mysticism. In order to do the AbraMelin operation and exercise godlike powers, you actually have to be godlike. So the magician, instead of just tipping his hat to deity in an invocation, the magician actually has to gain enlightenment. And that's what the 18-month program is.
Is to ascend.
Is to do like Solomon really did, or the fable of Solomon.
Yeah.
He entered into the presence of God. In other words, he raised his consciousness to Godhead. And so what the AbraMelin operation says, the very first thing you do before you start to do magic is you become wedded to your own holy guardian angel, which is the level of consciousness that is centered in the Anahat chakra, or if you're projecting on the Kabbalistic tree of life, it's number 6. Okay? This is like the union of the 6 of the macrocosm with the 5 of your stupid everyday consciousness. And they're wed together. They become one. And then your angel then tells you what to do. Okay? The angel is you, sort of.
It's like a higher version of you.
Yes. Crowley didn't like to simplify it and say it's your higher self. But ultimately, it's all yourself. So, yeah. Okay? You have to gain enlightenment. So, if it's truly your will to kill at a distance, that's fine. You could have that desire. But go ahead and gain enlightenment first, okay? And this operation was a heroic yogic, increasing in intensity and focus every day for 18 months until you literally snap. And just like we were discussing ecstasy, and you dissolve your consciousness into
ego death.
Yeah. Wedding your holy guardian angel is that experience.
Okay.
And then when your consciousness has been raised to that level, then you're informed enough to know whether doing magic this way or that way or that way is in your best interest or not. All the other medieval magicians, they might be able to temporarily have a little power to do something, but they have no idea if it ultimately is in their best interest or not. They're too stupid to do magic, in other words. And it'll blow up in their face.
So this operation was connecting with your intuition to allow you to know if if you're wanting to kill at a distance, is that the right thing to do?
Right.
Or what should you do?
Right. And so the analogy, the metaphor would be, now your angel informs you. That your angel is your counselor. So there's the AbraMelin operation that Crowley was working with was the Mather's translation, which was a little shorter and is a fragmented thing. But Crowley recognized, yes, this is high magic. This is great yoga. This is different than the other stuff. This is on a level all of its own. I'm going to do it. And so he buys this house up in Inverness, Scotland, at the shores of Loch Ness.
Loch Ness.
You can't make this stuff
No,
up.
you can't, right?
And he starts to do all the preliminary work, and he takes the oath and everything else, and starts making the sigils. And he notices that. He says demons are running loose in town. Who knows? People break out in nosebleeds all over the place. But then MacGregor Mathers, his magical teacher, who he absolutely worships, his Golden Dawn magical master, is in trouble in Paris. And there's a revolt in the Golden Dawn.
Oh.
The lodge in London is revolting, and because Mathers won't come back from Paris with more. It's like a battle of magicians. It's very cinematic. And so Crowley says, I will abandon my AbraMelin operation temporarily and go to Paris and rescue my master. And so he goes, he abandons the AbraMelin operation for the time being. And I'll explain that in a second.
Okay.
And goes to Paris and embroils himself in the battle that is about to take place in the Golden Dawn. Okay. So that all falls apart. The Golden Dawn more or less breaks up because of Crowley. Okay. He's just, you don't want him to join your club. But Crowley will later, around 1904, 1905, he will later walk across China. He has a pony. But as he's walking across China, he is redoing the AbraMelin operation in his mind as he's monotonously rocking back and forth on his pony. And Crowley would later claim that he finished his AbraMelin operation. He was so far entranced that the pony fell off of a cliff with him on it, or a small cliff.
Wow.
And he didn't even notice it until they had to pull the horse off of him.
Wow.
So
That's interesting. So he left the operation to go save somebody. He goes and does that. The Golden Dawn ends up breaking up probably into a subsex, right?
yeah,
And then after that, he decides to go through China to complete the AbraMelin, correct?
yeah. Well, he just continued on his adventures.
Because I mean, according to the AbraMelin, you're supposed to gain some great power after you're done. One of them, invisibility, things like that. Of course, I don't know of anybody who's done it, or do you know anybody who's done it, or do you know anybody who's practiced it?
I know lots of people that have done the operation,
but not successful at that.
But I don't know if they're invisible because
I don't see them anymore.
Because I'm not seeing them most of the time.
So it works, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I just thought that was an interesting topic, because I know he tried doing it, and of course there's a bunch of lore behind it where he did release the Loch Ness Monster because of the AbraMelin. He didn't finish it. And, I know there's a bunch of things that you hear. It's just, I'd rather hear from a reliable source.
If I might plug one of my own works.
Please do.
Yeah. Years ago, I was asked to write a screenplay, fantasy about Crowley. And, it was actually the time period that we're talking about that the book covers, and the breakup of the Golden Dawn and the going to Paris and all of that, and the book is and then of course nothing ever came of the screenplay, and about 10 years later another film company said, yes, we want to do it, but we're the UK Film Council, and the screenplay has to be written by a Brit in order for us to get the funding. So, but don't worry, all you have to do is turn it into a novel, and then we'll adapt the novel, and we'll pay you for it.
Nice. So there's always a loophole.
I said, all I have to do is turn it into a novel, huh? Okay. So I turned the screenplay into a novel so it could be turned into a screenplay.
By a Brit.
Right?
And so I published the novel, okay? And the novel is called Aleister Crowley, Revolt of the Magicians. And you can get it in paperback or on Kindle. Aleister Crowley, Revolt of the Magician. And it's fun. It's not good history, but it's good fun.
That's cool. I think at this point, this is where we probably want to ask our audience for any questions to ask you. I have them live right here on our Instagram. So if anybody would like to ask Lon any questions right now is the time. Go ahead and shoot one out, and we'll get it to him. Yeah. Questions.
So I'll ask a question while
Sure,
we're waiting
go for it.
some questions. We have one here. So today Hollywood is perceived as having an underworld filled with sex, drugs, and magic. Was this any way influenced by Crowley?
Sex, drugs, and magic was... Crowley liked all of that. But I rather think that Crowley was less the cause of the movements that we're seeing in modern times, but rather a voice that was recognizing what was happening and talking about it. Crowley called himself a prophet. The Book of the Law calls him a prophet.
That's a pretty big title.
And a prophet is a very particular and strange kind of holy person. A prophet doesn't have to be a saint. A prophet doesn't have to actually be pious or pure or holy. None of the Old Testament prophets were. They're wild and crazy.
Oh, yeah.
And Elisha, he killed a couple of kids just for making fun of his haircut, all a prophet has to do is to be conscious of a profound shift in human consciousness and be able to give voice without inhibition to that shift in consciousness. A prophet just has to know what's happening and have the audacity to risk his or her life and reputation in announcing it to everyone who will listen.
And sharing the message.
And that's what Crowley truly was. And without even trying, that's what he was. And the sex, drugs, and magic of Hollywood may have been, if Crowley had never been born, may have still been happening just the way it's happening right now. But Crowley was one of the first ones to say, hey, we're really going to have a wild time with sex, drugs,
and magic.
Right. And he came through Hollywood, and he made fun of everybody because they were on cocaine. But it wasn't in the same way that Dr. Timothy Leary was like a prophet of LSD. I mean, that was sort of his focus. This truly is changing human consciousness, Leary would say. Crowley was saying human consciousness is changing. And the big message of Crowley's change in human consciousness is a very, very small thing. Are we off the...
No, we're still on.
Okay.
We're just having a little technical difficulty back there. It's okay, though. We'll keep going.
The difference between the old aeon and the new aeon is just our own self-identity. And our own self-identity is directly connected to our perception of our place in the universe. For I don't know how many thousands of years, we have actually thought deep down inside that the sun comes up in the morning and goes down at night. Okay? Even years and years and years after we know that
we're rotating.
That it rotates and stuff, we're still programmed with sun up, sun down.
Yep.
Okay. And as long as we were programmed with that idea of sun up, sun down, we're saying, I'm born and I die. I'm born and I die. Birth, death.
The calendar, the time.
Right. But finally, something has happened that has caused at least the majority of people and their personal consciousness to actually realize the sun is on all the time. The sun's on all the time. There is no up, down. There is no dark, light. There's only light. And enough of us have that so deeply implanted now. Mothers tell their little kids, don't be afraid of the dark. The sun is shining on the other side. Okay, the sun's still shining. It never goes off. So as long as we don't think the sun dies, now we're starting to realize that we don't die. Consciousness, the immortality, is what the Book of the Law calls the consciousness of the continuity of existence. That's how we overcome death, by realizing we've never been off in the first place. That's the only difference between the old aeon dying God and the new aeon formulas. So all of Crowley's little tinkerings with rituals are just tinkering with old rituals
And applying new.
and applying the new formula to them.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
We have one question by Joyce Christine. What is the connection between Kundalini Yoga, the Sephiroth, and consciousness?
They're all the same thing.
Real quick. There you go.
You can go ahead and just look at the classic diagram of the Tree of Life, and just simply rearranging a couple along the side, you can project them right on the major 7 sequence of the chakras. Each of those chakras could be seen as a level of consciousness that when they have been properly and in a balanced way and in a balanced order activate, your self-identity is transferred to that chakra. And the idea that the lowest chakra and the highest chakra are uniquely linked, and for that we can go to the Hermetic axiom of as above, so below, or Malkuth is in Kether as Kether is in Malkuth.
Yeah.
Or when we play with tarot cards, the tens and the aces are connected, and the aces and the princesses, the highest high and the lowest low, are the same thing. They're the same thing.
Right on.
Everything in between is like playing with middle management.
Middle management.
And the AbraMelin operation was intended to completely activate the Anahat, or the heart chakra. So that's knowledge and conversation of the Holy Guardian Angel. So if you've activated the Anahat chakra, you've done the AbraMelin operation.
Right on. So I think at this point, if there's any of you want to talk about the books and where we can get them, what you have here, so that our audience can go and purchase, and then we're going to wrap it up, do our credits and our goodbyes, and get ready for episode 5 next week.
Okay, I've got quite a few books, and if you just go to Amazon and put my name in, you'll see all of them.
Duqette.
Milo Duqette.
Milo Duqette.
Yeah. But if you're really interested in Kabbalah and the Kabbalah relationship to the tarot and magic, I would suggest understanding Aleister Crowley's Thoth Tarot.
I want to check that out, definitely.
And I brought this along if you're interested in Enochian magic.
Enochian Vision Magic, of
Enochian
course.
Vision magic. But this is one that I hardly ever talk about, and it's really of interest to Masons.
Oh, definitely.
It's called The Key to Solomon's Key, Secrets of Magic and Masonry. And I wanted just to write a simple handbook for Goetic magic,
The
Solomonic
greater key and the lesser
magic.
key.
And I wanted to find something historic to say about Solomon. And, I couldn't find anything historic to say about Solomon. And that led me on a quest where I seem to have found certain things that are extremely interesting to Masons.
I definitely want to check that out. Man.
So that's Key to Solomon's Key. And that's by Lon.
That's perfect for our study group. Thank you so much.
And I got CDs. I'm a songwriter too.
Oh, okay.
And,
what kind of music?
It's sort of, it's acoustic, folky kind of stuff. But
Okay.
I just write my own stuff, and that's why I was at the Scottish Rite's Got Talent, and
Oh,
so I went and sang there.
awesome, man. So just want to let everybody know, please look up Lon Milo Duqette and get his books, preferably from a mom and pop. But if you don't have that near you, Amazon's always a nice place to go. We want to give a mention of our lapel pins and our rings. We do have them on sale. Please DM us for more details. We have our website in the works right now where you can purchase, and it should be up by next week. I want to give a mention to brothers who are putting in work. We have John Paul Gomez of Fraternal Ties, Apathy. Oh, man, Apathy, Demigods. And he's also a real estate agent. He can sell you a house, which is cool.
Abram.
Yeah. So, well, you know, I want to thank Alley Harbor Lodge for letting us use the building. The production is Indigo Beehive and One World partnering up. And I want to thank Performance G, Vera Auto Care, and, you know, any brother who supports us or any folks who support us, you know, thank you very much. We're doing this to bring more awareness to the esoteric and to the occult, not just for Masonry, but for everyone. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you very much, Lon. I greatly appreciate you coming on the show. And next week, we'll have another show, probably Thursday or Friday. We're going to go live. We're going on a spiritual retreat, and it should be very, very interesting. So please stay tuned for that.
That'll be on location.
On location, in a disclosed area. We have a whole western town to ourselves, which is going to be pretty cool.
For sure.
So thank you very much, and have a good night.